We're going to pause and take a quick break from understanding the editor and look at some of the common types of items that make up our project and how they might be used. Starting with our content browser and the assets that make up our project, which we currently have set to collapse, I'm going to go to Content Browser 1, if you don't already have one, drag the tab and snap it back to my bottom. That way I have a content browser that's already open. The items in our content browser represent assets. So it could be a texture, could be a material, could be a blueprint, could be an object, could be a text file we've converted to a data table. It's the stuff we're going to use to make up our actual project. If we go into, let's say, geometry here, and here's our SM building, we can right click on it, and we're going to go ahead and show that in Explorer. And we're going to see inside of our storage device, in my Windows File Explorer here, we have a .u asset file. This is the FBX, or our static mesh file, brought in from somewhere else, imported into the engine, converted into Unreal's format, and then saved as an asset file. It's an asset that exists on the disk. It is one individual item, and we have a bunch of stats you can see if you mouse over it. Inside of our viewport, we have actors. These are items that exist inside of our world that represent something. For example, I can click on my building here, and if we move our world outliner a bit, we can see that it's got a name of building, and it's of type static mesh actor. It's an actor, so something that exists inside of our actual world that is comprised of a static mesh. So you can see a static mesh component here. And that static mesh component has a static mesh property, which is our building, a reference to the building inside of our asset browser right here. Now, if you wanted, we could duplicate this building. I'm going to duplicate this. You'll learn how to do this shortly. And we now have two instances or two copies of this static mesh actor in our world, each of them having a reference to the static mesh building or the asset in our content browser. But these are unique. If I was to move one somewhere else, you'll notice its unique transformation information, its location in the world, is different than the other one. But it still references physical items on our disk like this building. So these are unique instances of actors in our world. I'm going to go and delete the extra one. Now, in the middle of all this, but kind of the main thing, is our object. Everything, for the most part, is made up of an object inside of Unreal Engine. If we were to go to our content folder, I'm going to right-click in it, and at the top we have Create Basic Asset. We have Blueprint class. Now, if I click on All Classes, at the bottom we can see Direct Base Class for all UE4 objects. The object. The object is the brains, basically, behind everything that we're going to be working with inside of the engine. And below the object is all the individual types. Like we have an actor, so something that's inside of our world. Or we might have an anim notify. It's a notification during an animation. So for the most part, when you're trying to keep track of what you're working with, when you're working with stuff in the engine, assets are the physical things that exist on your disk that represent something. It could be a physical asset like a material or a mesh or a texture or a sound, or it could be another item like an object that represents like your game mode or game instance or information about animation. And then you have objects, which is basically what everything's made up of. And then you have your actors, which are specific objects that are designed to exist in our world that represent something, like in this case, a static mesh actor. Or you might have a transform actor, or in this case, you might have a post-process volume, or a sun sky, or a height fog. So when you're working with things, keep that in mind, because you have actor references, object references, class references, and understanding the basics of these different types will help when you're trying to figure out what you're going to need to be working with. Now, I know that was a lot, and with all that said, let's try and keep in mind it's just a small and brief look at these concepts and how they work with the engine. As we continue in the course, we will make sure these are called out when we run into them so you can clearly understand when and what they're used for.